Well, good morning. Welcome to Wellspring. So good to see all of you here. And hello to those of you on Zoom. Nice to see you there as well. Anyway, my name is Edward Burrellbaugh, and I'm part of your Sunday, October 5th. October already, Sunday service team. So first we have a few announcements. As usual, we announce Early Birds. Early Birds meets on Sunday morning at 9:30 on Zoom, and the link is in your weekly email and on the website. You can come to the second row. Our speaker today is Keith Giles, and on the 12th we have Reverend Sandy, and we have then Randy Granger, and the 26th is Donna Stryker. And those of you who were here last Sunday and enjoyed Donna Stryker's talk, I'm sure she'll have another wonderful message. I was out of town and I got to look at the recording yesterday, and it appeared to be a very moving service. Anyway, not to detract from either of our other speakers in October, but just to let you know she'll be back. Our lunch bunch meets this Wednesday, and they're meeting at Ruby Tuesdays on Telshore. That's 11:30 on October 8th. Be there or be square. This Wednesday at 6:30 is the Board of Trustees meeting. And it's on Zoom. You're welcome to join us. Just contact me or any one of the board members to find the web log on or the Zoom log on and so forth. We, of course, are doing the business of Wellspring, and there's nothing secret. You're welcome to join. And we have a section called Community Input. Our Thursday evening group continues to meet here and on Zoom. We usually have between, I think 5 to 8 type of thing. And we usually play a video from Gaia or elsewhere, inspirational video, and then have a discussion afterwards. It usually lasts about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how long the video lasts and the liveliness of the discussion. You're welcome to join us either in the social hall or on Zoom, and just get a hold of me or Cleona, and we'll give you the coordinates for that as well. Hey, I'm on track, yeah. So our October outing is suggested, New Horizons Band in concert on Saturday, October 11th, 3 o'clock in Atkinson's Recital Hall. It's free. And we'll collect those of us who are there and go to dinner at Cattle Baron following the concert. We have Jean Geringer is back in town and is restarting her dowsing workshops. The next workshop will be Saturday, October 18th from 1:30 to 3:30 here in the social hall with a suggested donation of $25. Yes, okay. Well, I just was surprised to see it here. So we welcome today Keith Giles. He left the pulpit to follow Jesus and started a church where 100% of the offerings goes to the poor. He has written many books, among them the Quantum Sayings of Jesus. And Before You Lose Your Mind, about deconstructing bad theology in the church. That has got to be interesting as well. And lastly, our prayer team remains ready to serve and support you. You may submit a prayer request via our webpage, or we have slips in the back here. You can write on them, and just please give them to me or contact me with your prayer request, and I'll bring them with me to our Tuesday prayer meeting. We meet at 4:15 on Tuesday, so if you have something on that or just want to support us, just sit in your quiet space during that time and join us. Because we know that there is no limit to prayer as well as the energy of prayer. So now for our invocation. So we come together today in the presence, that one great presence, that one mind, that one love, that we all know is here in intensity to lift, support this meeting today, knowing that just the right music, just the right message, just the right reading, and just the right me and you shows up. So we give thanks for this presence, allow it to fill, permeate, and lift each and every one of us. And so it is. So now please stand if you're able and sing with us our song of joy. The words will be up here, and so will the musician.
I think everybody knows the song anyway. Here we go. I release and I let go, let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for love. No more sorrow, no more strife. I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for love. I release and I let go. Let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for love. No more struggle, no more strife. I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for love. I release and I let go. Let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for love. No more struggle, no more strife. I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for love.
So today, let's just remain standing as we read together our vision, mission, and affirmation. So our vision: to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission: to support individual spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. Our affirmation: I release and let go of all that no longer serves me, making space for Spirit's infinite good. Transformation is my birthright, and I welcome it with an open heart. I trust in the divine flow of life, knowing that I am always supported. You may be seated. Thank you. And now we have Melody Burns as our guest musician. Thank you.
Oh, it's always nice to have this enthusiasm. I remembered. How about that? We could. I could sing loud.
That too.
I had 3 songs picked out for this space, and I went with the third one, interestingly. This is one of my favorites. It's called Give Light, written by Greg Artzner and Terry Leonino. Give light, and people will find a way. Give light, people will find a way. Give light, and people will find the way. People will find the way, I do believe. Teach peace, and people will find the way. Teach peace, people will find the way. Teach peace, and people will find the way. People will find the way, I do believe. Stand together, and people will find the way. Stand together, people will find the way. Stand together, and people will find the way. People will find the way, I do believe. Give love, and people will find the way. Give love, people will find the way. Give love, and people will find the way. People will find the way, I do believe. Give light, and people will find the way. Give light, people will find the way. Give light, and people will find the way. People will find the way, I do believe. People will find the way, I do believe.
Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Now it's time for the reading. And what I did for the reading was I got a collection of one-liners from the founders and who we think of as the leaders of the New Thought movement, except for Quimby. I didn't get one from Quimby. And this has to do with Christ in all, the spirit of oneness. Ernest Holmes, we all know who he is, says, "There's one life, that life is God, that life is mine now." We've heard that over and over. So from Charles Fillmore, who those of you know is founder of Unity, the divine presence in all humanity is the Christ, and in this realization we are one with every living soul. Okay. Emma Curtis Hopkins, known as the teacher of teachers. The I am within you is the same I am within all creation. In knowing this, we see no separation, only the one expressing as many. Thomas Troward, spirit is life, and there is only one spirit. Therefore, there is only one life. That life must be the same in all. Now, all of us read Emerson in high school, probably. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. Another Holmes, every person is a center of divine activity, the infinite life individualized in each of us. This is, you know this by other words, but this is from Unity. The Christ in me salutes the Christ in you. We are one in spirit, one in truth, one in God. Namaste, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Myrtle Fillmore, again, Unity. The presence of God fills all space, and the same spirit that dwelt in Jesus dwells in every soul, open to its inflow. This was one I wasn't familiar with, so I had to go back to what I call the New Thought family tree to find out where this person was. And this is Nona Brooks. And she was a student of Emma Curtis Hopkins. She was also the founder of Divine Science. And we tend to have left Divine Science kind of off to the side in the family tree. Anyway, she says, God is not a person afar off, but the very life within us, the one life living as all lives. And another from Emma Curtis Hopkins, there's no separation in mind. The one knows itself in infinite form, and that is creation. So with that, I have a little intro here to our speaker today. Most of us didn't know him until we knew him. He's the best-selling author of the 7-part Jesus book series. He's been interviewed on CNN with Anderson Cooper, Coast to Coast Radio with George Norrie, USA Today, BuzzFeed, and John Fugelsang's Tell Me Everything. His latest books, The Quantum Sayings of Jesus, Decoding the Lost Gospel of Thomas, and The Quantum Gospel of Mary, and The Lost Gospel of Truth, have both been on Amazon's bestsellers list since they were released. And by the way, he has some here today in case you're inspired to buy them. He co-hosts the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, which sounds like that would be really cool, and his solo podcast, Second Cup with Keith, which are both available on your usual sources, Spotify, Amazon, etc. He currently lives in El Paso with his wife, Wendy. And with that, Keith.
Thank you. Wow, thank you all so much. It's an honor to be with you. Let me trade. There you go. Honor to be with you. I was telling somebody earlier, Edward was asking me, like, he says, technically you are a reverend, right? And I was like, yeah. I was licensed and ordained as a Southern Baptist minister. I don't claim that anymore. A recovering Southern Baptist. So this is all kind of, this new thought stuff is very new to me. I only really discovered, I think I was invited to speak at the Unity Church in El Paso, I guess over a year ago. And that was my first introduction. And it's funny because a lot of times when I speak at different churches, I kind of like to push the envelope a little bit. I like to kind of like challenge people, you know, gently. But, you know, that's kind of like what I feel like is one thing I'm kind of called to do. And so, like, you know, I introduce ideas and ask questions and ask people to kind of like, you know, kind of push things a little bit. And what I found is that it's almost impossible to do that in the New Thought movement because things that I think are so radical and wild, I'll just say them and you guys just nod and go, yeah, of course. Right? So you guys have been here longer than me. I'm new to this whole New Thought thing, and I do wonder, like, where have you guys been my whole life? I wish I had discovered you a long time ago. But it is wonderful to be with you this morning, and I wanted to talk about the Gospel of Thomas because I do think it's the answer to everything. And one day I might write a book called The Answer to Everything because I really do feel like it does contain something that really more than ever we need right now. And we'll talk about that a little bit in my talk this morning. The year was 1945, and two men were desperately searching for lost treasure in the hot desert sands of Egypt, hoping to find something of worth, of value, to help them take care of their mother while they were in prison, because less than 24 hours earlier, they had chased and killed the man responsible for their father's death in that same Egyptian desert. And suddenly, as they were digging, one of the men's shovel hit something solid. They quickly put down their shovels, started digging with their hands. And what they found was a large, like 4-foot tall sarcophagus? No, it was actually more like a jar, and it was still sealed tight. And at first, the older brother said to the younger brother, well, what if it's like a genie? What if it's cursed or something, right? And then the other one said, yeah, but what if it's gold? So taking a deep breath, the man grabbed the shovel, broke the seal, and opened the jar. And what they did not realize at that time was that they had found the greatest archaeological time capsule of lost ancient text ever uncovered. That place was Nag Hammadi, Egypt. The treasure contained, among other things, the lost Gospel of Thomas, and the man with the shovel's name was Muhammad Ali. Not the boxer, but that really was his name. And the Gospel of Thomas it's just one of the many texts that were uncovered at Nag Hammadi. And this was in 1945. Included in that time capsule were also many other lost Christian texts, like the Gospel of Truth, Thunder Perfect Mind, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Philip, and over 30 other lost ancient texts. Now, before that discovery, we only had fragments or quotes from the Gospel of Thomas, mostly from early church fathers, to even prove that such a thing existed. But once the text was uncovered and translated into English, and this took until 1950, and then later published for everyone to read it in 1975, the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas finally came into focus. So before we get into it, I need to explain a little bit about the Gospel of Thomas. There's a lot of misconceptions about the Gospel of Thomas. Number one, it's called the Gospel of Thomas, but it's not really a gospel. What I mean is that a gospel usually, we think of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're narratives. They're stories, right? They tell us about the birth of Jesus, the life of Jesus, the ministry of Jesus. They talk about, different significant events in the life of Jesus, the crucifixion, the resurrection. They talk about the second coming and all that. And that's usually what you would find in a gospel. And the Gospel of Thomas has none of that. It's not a narrative story at all. It doesn't touch on any of those things at all. It doesn't even mention those things. That's because, really, the Gospel of Thomas is just a collection of the sayings of Jesus. And a really important thing, and we had some friends over to our house last night, and someone asked me this about the Gospel of Thomas, like, does anyone ever accuse you of teaching Gnosticism? And I was like, well, yes, they do, but it's only because they don't understand what Gnosticism is usually, and that Thomas is not a Gnostic text. So it's often assumed to be, and it's included when people talk about Gnostic text, but it's not a Gnostic text. And what I mean by that is Gnosticism is when people think of Gnosticism, it's really more like what they call Sethian Gnosticism. So there was a stream in the early church of something called Gnosticism, but they had some very strange views. For example, like they thought the flesh was evil, and therefore Jesus couldn't have come in the flesh. He must have been a ghost or a spirit. They believed that the God that created this planet and all of us was actually not the one true God. He was some kind of a demigod, and he was just kind of either dumb or arrogant or something, and he thought he was the greatest creator, the only creator. He didn't realize there was, one above him that made it him. Anyway, so those kind of things. Like Thomas doesn't talk about anything like that. Neither does the Gospel of Mary or the Gospel of Philip or the Gospel of Truth. They don't contain any of those teachings, right? So I'll talk a little bit in a minute about what they do talk about. So hopefully that clears up what the Gospel of Thomas is not. And again, as I said, what it is simply a collection of the sayings of Jesus, 114 of them, okay? Half of those sayings we already have in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The other half are totally brand new. So we had never seen these before until they were uncovered in 1945 and then translated into English in 1950. So how did it get buried? And why was it suppressed? And why doesn't it appear in our Bibles today? Well, that is a long story that I cannot answer in the time that I have. I did write a book about it, but I'll give you the high points if I can. The short version is, believe it or not, Christians from the very beginning have not always agreed with one another. I can just use this to do that. I'm not going to move around from that. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so Christians don't get along sometimes. They don't always agree on things, right? So that's been going on literally since the beginning. And so there was, in fact, Dr. Elaine Pagels talks about how when we talk about Christianity, the history of Christianity, even going back to the first century, you cannot talk about Christianity singular, as if there was only one group of people who all believed the same things and they were all, called themselves Christians. Instead, you have a plurality. You've had probably 20, 30 different groups of people who all would have said that they followed the teachings of Jesus and would have said, I'm a Christian, but would not have agreed on various different things, right? And that's been going on a very long time, again, from the beginning. And so if what we call the Orthodox Christians, we would call them the proto-Orthodox first century, second century, third century. These were guys like Irenaeus and Tertullian and Justin Martyr and like all those guys, the usual suspects. And we know their names because they ended up winning that struggle, right? So, right, they got to write the history, and so then they got to define themselves as, we are the true Christians. But again, if you roll the clock back to the first century, that wasn't the case. There was many different groups of people that all followed Jesus and had different ideas. One of those groups were the Valentinians. They followed the teachings of a guy named Valentinus. And we know this about Valentinus, that and we know it from Irenaeus, actually, and Tertullian and others, basically his opponents. They told us about him. Who was this guy, right? Well, he taught things like men and women and children and people of any age, they don't have to be ordained. They're free to read the scriptures and pray over one another, and they don't have to have a bishop there. And of course, Irenaeus and others did not like that idea, right? Notice there only be men and those kind of things, and ordained people. Whereas Valentinus wanted everyone, right? Everyone has Christ in them. Everyone should be free to express the Christ that's in them. And that was another main thing that Valentinians taught, was that Christ was already in everyone and everything, right? And the Orthodox didn't like that. No, you have to jump through our hoops first, right, to get that Christ in you the right way. And so again, these are the things that early on they struggled with and they argued about, right? And so what we know about Valentinus is, again, from his opponents, he was the disciple of a guy named Theodos. And Theodos was the disciple of this guy named Paul, the Apostle Paul. Literally, Theodos was a disciple of Paul, and his disciple was Valentinus. So keep that in mind. It's really interesting some of these ideas may have come from. And so this struggle, though, continued. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. My wife is directing me to speak more into the microphone. So this tension and this struggle lasted for several hundred years, right, between the followers of Valentinus and the followers of Irenaeus and what we call the Orthodox. And this struggle lasted up until the time of Constantine. And we know what happened. Maybe you know what happened during the time of Constantine. The emperor suddenly decides that he's a Christian. And then he calls these councils together, right? The Council of Nicaea, the Council of Carthage, and other councils. And even though for over 300 years, the church has had no problem with the fact that you could follow Jesus and have your own personal connection with Christ, and we didn't have to have only one text and only one agreed upon set of doctrines, suddenly Constantine decides, oh no, we have to have that. We all have to have only one set of doctrines. We have to have only one set of books to call the Bible to pull this together. And we can't have everybody just deciding for themselves what's inspired for them. And so after the Council of Nicaea, Athanasius, who's on Team Irenaeus, now with the weight and the authority of Constantine, the Roman Empire behind him, he writes a letter. It's called the Easter Letter. And the Easter letter goes out to all the Christian churches, right, in the Roman Empire. And what Athanasius tells them is that they can no longer use certain texts in their services, in their sermons, and their times together. And the list that he gives them of the text they can no longer use, which by the way means up to that point they were using them. included the Gospel of Thomas and many of the texts that are in the Nag Hammadi. So what we think happened was, oh, by the way, so this was just a way of kind of getting one over the Valentinians, like once and for all, let's squash these people, let's silence them, because these are the texts that they prefer. We're gonna canonize the text that we prefer, and the canonization came later. But it was a way of basically once and for all saying, we define Christianity. And so luckily, there was one monk probably or someone in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, or near there, that got that letter, and instead of burning them, decided to put them all together in this jar, and he sealed it, and he buried it in the sand until Muhammad Ali and his brother accidentally found it, right? So we're so grateful for that, because without that, we would have no actual copies of these texts. And so, the question would be like, so what's the big deal about the Gospel of Thomas? Why is that so important? Well, as I said earlier, I personally think it contains the answer to everything, at least the answer to one of our biggest problems today. My wife and I were talking, just driving over here today, just this morning, feeling the division in our country, and that division in our communities, in our families, right? I in my lifetime, I don't think I have ever experienced this level of division. And the media is just continuing to create that division. Social media continues to just convince us that it's us versus them, right? And that is the main mentality of the world that we're living in today. Politically, religiously, socially, it's everywhere we turn. All day, every day, we are told how divided we really are. And war and genocide and protests and violence and political fear-mongering, this us versus them is everywhere. It's Christians against atheists, Democrats against Republicans, Jews against Muslims, men against women, families turned against one another. And you can feel that division and that separation, sometimes in your own body, in your own soul. This feeling of being torn apart and turned against one another all the time. But the Gospel of Thomas suggests that even if you feel it, even if you see it, even if it seems to be the world that you're living in, that isn't really reality. That the truth is, what Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, is that we are more connected than anyone wants us to believe. Now, it's difficult to keep that in mind, that we're all connected, because even our senses tell us that, right, I'm here and you're there, and we're not connected. We're different people. We're separated. You're you and I'm me and all that. But what's fascinating is, and this is why my book is called The Quantum Sayings of Jesus, because about the time I was writing that book, I also started looking into quantum physics. And what I saw was how exciting it was that I'm reading Thomas, I'm reading what Jesus is saying in the Gospel of Thomas, and it's lining up with what scientists and quantum physicists are saying about the way reality works, the way the universe actually is. And so quantum scientists now are saying that this idea of separation is not real. That's not reality. It's an illusion. And so for centuries, let me talk a little bit about how they got to that conclusion. For the longest time, there's been this division between science and mystics or philosophers or religious leaders, right? You have these two streams of thought. And scientists are materialists, right? If I can't measure it, if I can't see it and touch it, right, it isn't real, right? So there's no soul and, there's no spiritual thing, like, because we can't measure that and we can't, scientifically prove that exists. And so science has been very materialistic. But then on the other side, we have mystics and philosophers and religious leaders saying, well, okay, to the scientists, they'll say, okay, if that's true, if that's the way reality is, how can you use science to explain to us what is human consciousness? What is that? Where does that come from, right? And why does human consciousness arise in human beings and not in trees or rocks or kumquats or whatever, right? What's going on here? And of course, scientists could not answer that question. And so for the longest time, this was the debate between the two of them, right? Science can prove all these different things, except to the point of explaining human consciousness. And of course, the mystics saying, well, we don't need all that. We believe that the human consciousness and the human soul is real. And so they did this little experiment. And this is really the beginning of quantum physics. The crazy thing was, so they were trying to understand, the scientists were trying to understand the nature of light. Because for the longest time, the question was, is it a wave or is it a particle, right? And so to prove that, to try to figure out what that was, they set up an experiment. They had a dark room. They had like a sort of a filter set up with 2 slits in it. And they had a sensor on the back of the wall. And so they fired individual photons at this screen. And they said, well, if it's a wave, like if it was a wave of water, for example, then when that wave hit those 2 slits, it would create an interference pattern on the back sensor. But if it's a particle, it'll just go through one of those holes, and there'll be little dots at the back, right? It'll be a particle. So there you go. So they did this, they set up the experiment, they turned it on, they ran the experiment, and they came back and like, oh, hey, there you go, it's light is a wave. There you go. Like, well, with science, we have to do it again. So we have to make sure we did it right, and you can't just do it once. You need repeatability. So they did it again. This time they observed what was happening. And this time the photon behaved differently. It behaved like a particle. And that really confused them. Because it was almost like, does the photon know we're watching? And then they did other experiments. I won't go into it because it got super complicated. But like, for example, one of the things they would do is they would have a prism. And they would fire the photon at the prism, which would split the photon into 2. And then they would measure this one, but not measure that one. And this one would do whatever that one did, even though it had never been measured. And so again, how did it know we were going to do that? I mean, it just went on and on and on. And the more they tried to make sense of it, ultimately the conclusion they came to was that, yes, the photon is conscious, and consciousness, the presence of an observer, somehow changed what happened. Now that changed everything. Because now what they realized was, what even physicists realized was, that original question, how do you explain how consciousness arises from matter, was the wrong question. Now the question they had was, how does matter arise from consciousness? Now that is wild. And so suddenly now you have quantum physicists talking about reality, and I've seen some of them do interviews where they'll stop themselves halfway through and be like, hey, listen, I know I sound like a philosopher right now. I know I sound like some kind of mystic weirdo right now, but this is what we're seeing in quantum physics. And so one of my favorite quotes, Sir James Jean, this was a quote in a London journal, the science journal. Nature. The journal is called Nature. And this is what he said about quantum physics. This is a conclusion to the article. And he says, we can no longer think of the universe in terms of a great machine, materialism, but instead we must describe the universe as a great thought or consciousness. And so what that tells us is, right, that this idea of separation is an illusion. Another phrase that quantum physics will throw around is this idea that everything is an expression of the quantum field. So everything is the quantum field, and the quantum field is everything. There's really just one thing in the entire universe, and it's the quantum field. And congratulations, you and I and everything else are expressions of that quantum field. Now, that's pretty exciting. That's pretty amazing. As a mystic, as someone who believes that they're in consciousness and in the human soul and in our connection to the divine, you could take that phrase, the quantum field is everything and everything is the quantum field, and you could say it like this: Christ is all and in all, right? Or everything is Christ and Christ is in everything. Or you could say source, or fill in the blank, whatever you're comfortable with. But the principle is the same. This idea that we are all connected to one big thing, and we are all expressions of that thing, and therefore, because we are all connected to that one great consciousness, or Christ, or God, or quantum field, or whatever you want to call it, that means we're also connected to one another. That means there's no separation between you and me. So that is amazing. And what I found fantastic was, that's kind of what Jesus was saying in the Gospel of Thomas. And the place I think he says it the best is saying number 22. It says, Jesus saw some infants who were being suckled, and he said to his disciples, these infants being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom. And they said to him, shall we then become infants to enter the kingdom? And Jesus said to them, when you make the two one, and when you make the inside as the outside, and the outside as the inside, and the upper as the lower, when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male is not male, and the female is not female, then you shall enter the kingdom. So in other words, what Jesus is saying to his disciples is this idea of inside, outside, right? Of upper and lower, male and female. That's the reality that your senses give you, that they are separate things. And Jesus is saying, no, you won't enter the kingdom until you realize all of those things are the same thing. They're all one thing. They're all connected. The first time, I have to be honest, the first time I read the Gospel of Thomas, it's been like 10 years ago, someone suggested that I read it, and I tried to read it. I probably didn't make it even to saying 22, because I just thought most of it was nonsense. It just made no sense to me. If you ever tried to read the Gospel of Thomas, just read it. But a lot of it is just like, what? It's really, like, who talks this way? So I kind of dismissed it. But I was getting ready to take a flight somewhere, and someone literally, I don't remember who, someone just mailed me this book. I think it was called The Hidden Gospel of Thomas or something like that, by William Duffy. And so I just put it in my bag. Next day, I jump on the plane. I'm reading it on the plane. And in the book, the introduction to the book, Duffy says what I already knew. He says, a lot of times people read the Gospel of Thomas, they think it's nonsense. I'm like, yeah, yes, it is. I'm with you so far. And then he says, well, it's because you don't know how to read it. You have to read the Gospel of Thomas through the filter, through the lens, through the reality and the understanding, the perspective of oneness and connection. And if you do, it makes total sense. And I was like, whoa. So then I couldn't wait, right? I started reading, going back to the sayings of Jesus from the Gospel of Thomas with that idea in mind, and it made sense. Whoa, that was very cool. So in other words, we are all connected. And Jesus is trying to teach us the same thing that quantum physics has only recently discovered. That we are not separate from one another, that we are connected. We are not separate from the great consciousness of the universe, or the quantum field, or the Christ, or God, or whatever you want to call it. This is also something that the Apostle Paul says. And they think the very first letter written, in fact, probably the very first Christian text we have any copy of, is the epistle to the Galatians that Paul wrote. Because I don't know if you know this, Paul's letters came before Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? And so here's this letter that Paul writes to the church in Galatia. And he says something in this letter to the Galatians that is either the most mind-blowing thing these people have ever heard in their life. Like, what? Or it's so normal, it's like when I'm talking to you guys and you're like, yeah, duh, right? They all get it. But he says to them in his letter to the Galatians, he says this. He says, there is no Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female, fill in the blank. Why, he says? Because we are all one in Christ. Think about that. Christianity is brand new. No one even has a copy of the Gospels. They get this letter from this apostle, and he says that. No separation. We are all connected. We are all one in Christ. And I think they didn't go, wow, that's a brand new idea. I never heard that. I think they were like, well, duh. Yes, of course, that they got it. And so not only does Jesus say this, and not only does Paul say this, it turns out that every other mystic for the last few thousand years has known this. Buddha, Rumi, St. Teresa of Avila, the Desert Fathers and Mothers, Black Elk, Meister Eckhart, so many others, they all know this same basic truth, that we are all one, that we are not separate, and that we are all connected. And so this is why I think it's so important for us to understand, especially today. I believe once we can all truly, honestly realize this connection, we can begin to finally love our neighbor as ourselves. You can do the things that Jesus said to do that seem so impossible. Love my enemy? But guess what? If you get this, that you are connected to the divine, and so is everyone else, then when you look at your enemy, you don't see an enemy, You see the Christ in that person. This is how, again, I think it's the end of poverty and war and all these things, right? How could I ever kill someone if I look at them and I see myself, or I see the divine reflected in them, right? If we could really get it. I was talking to, I think it was John before, next door, and somehow got on the topic of like the second coming of Jesus, right? Which is on a lot of people's minds these days. And I said, well, in my understanding, going back, I didn't used to think this, but I've gone back and looked at it. And every time in the New Testament it talks about the coming of Christ, it's the word parousia, it's in the Greek, and it just means presence, just the presence of Christ. And so what I think it's actually telling us is that the presence of Christ is already here. Jesus even said that, I'll never leave you, I'll never forsake you. He never left. Christ is in all of us. And actually what's happening is for 2,000 years, more and more and more of Christ is being awakened and born in the world until it covers the whole planet, until everyone awakens to this Christ within. And that is the second coming of Christ. That is how the kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven. You don't have to agree with me, but that's my perspective. And so, yes, I think this is a revolutionary message. I think if we could really get it, then it really would change us, and it would change the world around us. There's something really fascinating, actually, that Jesus says in the Gospel of John. That, again, I study the Bible half of my life at least, and I never saw it this way until, again, I kind of woke up and started reading things through that lens of connection and oneness. And in the Gospel of John, Jesus says to his disciples, I think it's chapter 14, it's near the end of the Gospel, when he's getting ready basically to, to ascend and leave them, or physically, right? And he says to them this, he goes, one day you're going to realize this, meaning you don't get it now, but trust me, one day you're going to wake up to this. And here it is. Here's what you're going to realize. One day you're going to realize, I am in the Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. I was always told to understand that as Jesus is only talking about himself. I think he's telling the disciples, you don't understand this yet, but one day you're going to have this aha moment where you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I'm in the Father. And you're going to turn to the next person around you and say, and you are in me, and I'm in you. And that will be the day that it all comes together, that you get it. And the Apostle Paul said something similar to idol-worshiping pagans. I think this is all very, very significant in the book of Acts. Paul is in Athens, right? They have all these idols. They're not Christians. He doesn't even mention Jesus' name to them. But he stands up to them and says, you have this idol to the unknown God. Let me tell you about this God that you don't know. And then he says, this is the God in whom we all live and move and have our being. This God is your Father. This God loves you, and this God does blessings for you, hoping that you will turn and see this God, right? And so again, it's just the affirmation to even idol-worshiping pagans. Christ is in you. You don't know it, right? And you are in Christ. This is reality. And so, again, 114 times in the Gospel of Thomas, over and over again, Jesus is giving us this message. It's a message that's been buried for over 1,000 years, but yet it's always been available to us through the wisdom of the mystics. I'm just going to read a couple of them, right? Buddha says, he who experiences the unity of life sees his own self in all beings. Black Elk, who I love, Native American shaman, said, peace will come to the hearts of men when they realize their oneness with the universe. It is everywhere. Julian of Norwich said, we are not just made by God, we are made of God. Teresa of Avila says, Christ has no body now but yours. Rumi says, everything in the universe is within you. Ask all from within. And one of my favorite mystics of all time said this, the human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of a prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And that mystic was Albert Einstein. And so this is why I call the wisdom of Jesus from the Gospel of Thomas the answer to everything. I really believe if we can truly embrace this vision as a humanity, as a human species, our shared divinity, our shared humanity, that it will bring us to a place of peace and unity that we are yearning for. I believe, by faith, that this is where the universe is taking us. That's what I loved about your song this morning. We sing these words even if we don't see it, right? That's not the reality I see, unfortunately, but I believe it. And I believe that if we keep shining our light, it will push back the darkness. In fact, darkness isn't a thing. It's the absence of something, right? And so we have this light within us. And it seems corny, and it seems like shooting BBs against the battleship, but it isn't. Actually, you shining your light, and you may think it's not very much, it doesn't mean anything, but it really does. Because other people around you see your light, and then they start to shine their light. And then all of a sudden, the darkness is being pushed back. So I believe this is where we are being taken. This is where we are going. If I get a chance to come back and share with you again one day, I'd love to talk a little bit about spiral dynamics, because that's one of the things that, as I've looked at it, it gives me a lot of hope that you can see, actually you can trace a trajectory of humanity in our elevating of our consciousness to this very day, that, believe it or not, we actually are moving in the right direction. But I believe this kind of spiritual wisdom, this simple truth that I'm talking about, is best expressed in two terms. One of them we already talked about this morning, namaste, and the other is Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an ancient African proverb that says, I am because you are. And namaste is an ancient Sanskrit phrase that means, the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. And those two sayings, I believe, encapsulate the truth that there really is no separation between us and the divine, and therefore there is no separation between me and you. That we are all one in the quantum field, the great consciousness, or in Christ. And Christ is all and is in all. That we are all filled with the fullness of Christ, who fills everything in every way. And my prayer is that one day we can all wake up and know this deep down in our hearts. Because if we really embrace this message and begin to live into that, I do believe it changes us and it will change the world. And the truth is that the world won't change until we change. So, Ubuntu and Namaste. Thank you.
Well, I couldn't help but be reminded of a saying of one of our local Unity ministers. I'm not sure where she got that, but she said the job of the minister is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Yeah, so very good. Well, again, thank you. It's a moment for me to kind of do a little blessing here. There's this sense of unity that Keith was talking about that we all know. The oneness settles in on us, operates through us. We have just to open our hearts to it. In the face of, as Keith said, what looks not to be unity, we affirm and acknowledge that unity exists. So we know this same energy flows through our friends and families and those who may be struggling with something that may not look that wonderful to them. But we hold for them and we know for them that each of them is surrounded by the divine comforter. Whatever it is they're going through is all part of that beautiful experience of God through them. So we just know that we can be a comfort to our friends and our family just by being. Just by being. Nothing to do, just to be. Let our light shine through so that they may see their own light. And interact with everyone knowing that Christ is within them. So as we work and operate with this quantum field, as Keith has said, our observation of it changes it. Our observation and our acknowledgement changes all that is around us. So we know this is how the law works that Ernest Holmes has spoken of so often. So we set our mental imprint on this quantum field. We release it, let the field operate, knowing that that is how it works. For that we are grateful. And so it is. Now we have some more music with our beautiful melody.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to go home and read the Gospel of Thomas again, because that was your first inclination was like, whoa, okay, all right. So, yeah. And I love the synchronicity, because the two other songs that I had thought about doing first were one called Knowing, that evermore my God and I are one. And the other one was The Father and I are one, you and I are one. And I thought, okay, interesting, but had to do the light. Wow. I also have a song with kumquats in it, and I thought, oh, that would have been fun. How often do you hear that? But what I have chosen for this second song, because September 21st was the United Nations Universal Day of Peace, and coming up October 24th is the United Nations Day. And so being in the middle of that, in the light of all that's going on in the world right now, I am grateful to have an opportunity to celebrate all the people that we don't often hear about that are working every day for peace and believe that peace is possible, including us. We believe that peace is possible. And several years ago, you may know that my husband Bob and I were traveling with Bruce Nearing's professional choir out of El Paso. We were in Switzerland. And on a day off, we decided, a few of us got on the train and went to Geneva to visit the United Nations. And it was an unbelievable and profound experience to be in that observation chamber looking over this huge auditorium filled with people of all races and all countries and all nations, collaborating, talking about peace, working for ways to make the world better for everybody. And that's happening all the time, and unfortunately we don't see enough about that. But that night, Bob was inspired to write this song, which I will share with you now. And being a good New Thought person, the last couple of verses were added later to make it an affirmation. This is called the Peace Chant. We saw peace today. We saw peace today. We walked hand in the peace today. We knew peace today. We knew peace today. We walked hand in hand, and now we understand, and we knew peace today. We felt peace today. We felt peace today. We walked hand in hand, and now we understand, and we felt peace today. We can see peace today. We can know peace today. We walk hand in hand, and now we understand, and we can feel peace today. Join me on this last verse. We are peace. We are peace today. We are peace today. We walk hand in hand, and now we understand, and we are peace, and we are peace, and we are peace, and we are peace today.
Thank you, Melody. And now it's time for our offering. So we have someone who's, yes, bringing the basket forward. Thank you, Judy. We acknowledge and receive our virtual and in-person gifts. We give great thanks for the offerings already given and those we will be receiving, because we know that giving and receiving are both part of one flow. We affirm that we are also part of that flow. We bless these gifts and know they are multiplied throughout our community. Thank you, Judy. So we wouldn't be complete if we didn't acknowledge the contribution of some of our folks. Obviously, our musicians and our speaker, top of the list. But we have this kind of quiet, hidden person in the back, Brenda, who's operating our tech, and Edwin on the camera, and all of you for bringing your wonderful energy here today. Because thank you. We wouldn't be us without us. So those of you in Zoom land, we thank you for joining us today. And lastly, those of us who are here can head across to goodies. I think as we heard last Sunday, this is the first Sunday of the month. This is birthday Sunday. We have a cake over there. Those of you on Zoom, we'll let you eat virtual cake. So we have 3 birthdays in October. We have John Waugh. Hey, we have James Hampton, which I'm sure is on Zoom, and Kamatara. So, hey, happy birthday to all of you. So please stand if you're able and join me with a benediction. And then we will gather in the aisle here and we'll sing together the peace song. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world, and so it is.